students, welcome back to day 48 of 99% in 99 days series for your class 10th board. So today is Saturday and it's time to revise whatever we have studied in this whole week. So in this whole week we have completed two chapters, that is carbon and its compounds from chemistry part of the science and how do organisms reproduce from bio, right? So in the initial part, on the first part of this video, I'll be revising the carbon and its compounds chapter. And in the next part, your bio teacher or bio ma'am, Jasmine ma'am, will be coming and discussing the chapter, how do organisms reproduce. Okay, so without any further delay students, let's get started. So first coming to covalent bonding in carbon. So we know that carbon has 4 valence electrons. It can neither gain 4 electrons nor it can accept 4 electrons, right? Why it cannot gain 4 electrons? Because it is difficult for 6 protons to hold 10 electrons, right? And at the same time, carbon also cannot lose 4 electrons because it requires more energy. So to solve this problem, what does carbon do? Carbon tries to satisfy its octet by forming covalent bond. Okay, now carbon can form a lot of covalent bond, right? That is because of two important properties of carbon, that is its catenation property and tetravalency. Now catenation allows carbon to form long chains, okay, and it also allows carbon to form multiple bonds, right? And in case of tetravalency, we know carbon has 4 valencies, so it can form 4 bonds. Okay. Next, coming to types of covalent bond, we have single, double and triple covalent bond. This is single bond, this is double bond and this is triple bond between 2 carbon atoms. Okay. Now coming to the properties of the covalent compounds. So they have generally low melting point and boiling point. They are poor conductors of electricity and they are their solubility in water, or I can say they are insoluble in water. Okay. Next, coming to the allotropes of carbon. So we know what is allotrope. So we have different forms of the same element existing in the nature are called as allotropes of carbon. Okay. So carbon has 3 important allotropes: diamond, graphite and fullerene. Okay. Next, coming to what do you mean by homologous series. So homologous series, if you know that it is a series of compounds in which the members present have the same functional group and similar chemical properties, and the successive members differ by a unit of CH2 group. So what are the other properties of homologous series? So they have the same general formula, they differ by CH2 unit, or you can say 14U, and the members of the homologous series show similar chemical properties. Okay. Now coming to the next one, the nomenclature of carbon and its compounds. So you should follow the 3 parameters. First should be prefix, where you have to name the substituents, then you have to give the root name, then you have to give the suffix name based on the functional group. Okay. Now we will see one example here. You can see, so if I name it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so 2 and 4, so I have 2,4 dimethyl, right? So this is the substituent part. Okay, this is the substituent part. And next, what is the 2, 3, 4, 5? The root name is pent, okay, and ANE stands for the alkane chain. Okay. Next we have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 carbon, right? So you can number it in this way or in this way. In both the side, the substituent is getting 3rd and 7th number, 3rd and 4th, 5th, 6th number, right? But then which is the correct way? You should see that here the name is starting with ethyl E and here it is starting from methyl M. So E should be getting less number. So 1, 2, 3. So 3 ethyl and 6 methyl, right? So I will get here 3 ethyl, 6 methyl. Okay. Next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 octane. Okay. Now coming to next one, coming to the classification of hydrocarbons. So hydrocarbons are, one second students. So hydrocarbons are classified into saturated and unsaturated. Saturated means CC single bond, and in unsaturated we have CC double bond and CC triple bond. Okay. The general formula of alkanes is CnH2n plus 2. For alkenes it is CnH2n, and for alkynes it is CnH2n minus 2. Okay, and the aromatic compounds are also a part of unsaturated carbons. Okay. Next, if we, okay, so here I want to introduce you to something called as DSAT or Diksha Scholastic Aptitude Test. So students, now when after passing 10th, we generally have a confusion like which stream is good for us, which stream we should choose, right? So to help you with this DSAT is there, where you get a 60-minute lecture and then you need to write one test, and this test is evaluated and you have a one-on-one mentorship where your strength, your weakness is evaluated, told to you, and which is the best career option for you is suggested. So if you want to be a part of this, do not delay, go to the description section, register for DSAT and then take the benefit of this and choose the right course for you. Okay, so let's move forward now. So as we told, so now as we say that there are saturated and unsaturated, so I already discussed saturated is CC single bond, right? This is CC single bond, and here we have two categories, CC double bond and triple bond. Here the general formula is CnH2n plus 2, and here it is CnH2n, and here it is CnH2n minus 2. Okay, fine. Next, coming to combustion. Okay, so the chemical properties of carbon, the first reaction is combustion. So when you burn a carbon compound in presence of oxygen, you get CO2 and H2O, right? That is called as combustion. But here there is something regarding the combustion of saturated hydrocarbons. They burn in the air with a blue and non-sooty flame, okay, the blue flame. Whereas the unsaturated carbons, okay, they burn with a yellow and sooty flame, okay. So that is about the combustion. Next reaction is oxidation. So carbon compounds such as alcohols, okay, they can be converted to carboxylic acid in the presence of strong oxidizing agents like KMnO4, right? Now why do we call it, what is an oxidizing agent? The substances which add oxygen to other substances are called as oxidizing agent. So example is your KMnO4, alkaline potassium permanganate, or you can write it as KMnO4, and acidified potassium dichromate, that is K2Cr2O7, okay. They act as an oxidizing agent in many chemical reactions. Next we have here addition reaction. So during addition reaction, what happens? The unsaturated hydrocarbons are converted to saturated hydrocarbons by adding hydrogen in presence of palladium or nickel, okay. So why the catalysts are used? The catalysts are used to speed up the reaction, okay. Next we have here example. So where is this reaction extensively used? In the hydrogenation of vegetable oils, okay, containing long unsaturated carbon chains using a nickel catalyst, okay. So in presence of nickel catalyst, and if you add hydrogen in presence of nickel, vegetable oils are converted to the vegetable oils are hydrogenated in this way, okay. So that is the use of this reaction. Next we have chemical properties, substitution last reaction. So whenever one group is substituted by another group, we called it substitution reaction, okay. Next we have two important compounds, that is ethanol and ethanoic acid. So let us quickly check the reactions of ethanol, okay. So first of all, ethanol will react with sodium to give you hydrogen gas, and it undergoes dehydration reaction to give you ethene, okay. Temperature you can remember at 443 Kelvin, and the reagent required is concentrated H2SO4, okay. So if I write this one, C2H5OH, okay, plus sodium will give you C2H5ONA plus H2, okay. Next is dehydration. If you have C2H5OH plus concentrated H2SO4, then you will get here CH2 double bond CH2, okay. Next coming to ethanoic acid. So what are the reactions of ethanoic acid? We have esterification, okay, then reaction with a base, so then it is an acid, so with base it will give you salt and water, and reaction with carbonates and bicarbonates, it will give you salt plus CO2 plus H2O, right. So the product here will be salt plus CO2 plus H2O. Here the product will be salt plus water, and here esterification, the product will be esters, right. Fine. Now coming to the most important and the last topic, that is soaps and detergents. Okay, so what are soaps generally? Soaps are the sodium or potassium salt of long chain carboxylic acid which are used for the cleansing purposes. Okay, now soaps are basic in nature, so that is why what they will do, they will turn red litmus paper blue. Okay, why they are basic in nature? Because they are made up of strong base and weak acid. Next example are sodium palmitate, sodium stearate. You can see the example here. Next is preparation of soap. So how is the soap prepared? So soaps are prepared by reacting fat or oil with NaOH to give you soap plus glycerol. Okay, so fat or oil is having what you can say, I can say like carboxylic acids. Okay, so with acids and base we will get salt here, soap is formed. Okay, and or sorry, generally, yeah, so you will get here salt which is giving you soaps now. Okay, and this process of making of soap is called as saponification. Next we have the structure of soap. So soap is made up of like two ends are there. One is your water repellent part and the other one is water soluble or the ionic part. Okay, so when the soap is dissolved in water, it forms something called as micelle. So let us see what is now micelles. So the cluster of molecules in which the hydrophobic tail, so it is like this. Okay, so if you, I think I have shown you the diagram. Yeah, one second. Yeah, so you can see here, this is the structure of soap and this is the ionic part and this is the non-ionic part or hydrophobic part and this is the hydrophilic part. Okay, so when you dissolve this in water, it forms a cluster of these particles like this, where the ionic part is towards the water and the chain is towards inside of the cluster. Okay, and this arrangement is called as micelle. Okay, now how do we use that to clean the water, clean your clothes? So when you dissolve the soap in water, it forms a colloidal suspension. Okay, so once this colloidal solution is formed, the soap molecules cluster together to form micelles. Okay, there are many micelles formed here. Now what happens, the dirt particles always adhere to the oily or greasy layer present on the skin or clothes. Okay, okay, now next what happened, when a dirty cloth is dipped into the soap solution, the non-polar hydrocarbon end of the micelles, means the inside part, go and sticks to the oil or greasy or the dirt that is present there. Okay, now what happens next, so when you do any mechanical action of rubbing or something, the oily layer from the dirty surface shaping it into a small globule, so that when you do this, the micelles bring out or just remove the oily or dirty things and come out of the cloth and remain in the water as globules, right? Then a stable emulsion is formed and then just you throw the water and these really dust or the oily, greasy, dirty particles are separated from the cloth. Okay, next, so what is the disadvantage of using soap? So there are one major disadvantages, it cannot be used with hard water, right? Because it forms scum with hard water. Okay, scum means the salt of calcium and magnesium salts. Okay, next is why then what is detergent? So detergents are your similar to soap, but here there is a small difference in their structure. These are the sodium salts of sulfonic acids or ammonium salts with chlorides or bromide ions. Okay, and what is the advantage of using detergents? That is, they do not form any scum with hard water. So this can be used in hard water. Okay, and if you see, they are used to make shampoo and products for cleaning of clothes. But there will be some disadvantages of detergents as well. So these are your, they are non-biodegradable, so they cause soil pollution. Okay, and they accommodate enter into the food chain and accommodate in the human body as well. Okay, so yes, so that's all students. So this was a brief revision of the whole chapter. I hope you would have revised very well. And do not leave this video. After this, Jasmine ma'am will be continuing about the revision of how organisms will reproduce. So please watch the complete video, and if you have any doubt, do not forget to comment down.
Hello my coolest and cutest little champions. I hope you're done with the revision session by Aishwarya ma'am, and now we are going ahead with biology. I am Jasmine Joy and I am going to help you with the revision of the chapter, that is how do organisms reproduce. The sole purpose of this video is to help you do a quick revision. So most of the times, even me when I was of your age, even now also sometimes, I take a lot of time for rereading stuffs, which is not something that I do not have that particular time. So basically, for efficient revision, you have to do it fast, you have to just revise the most important concepts, my dear children. Works? Okay, so let's get started with the first question that we have over here, that is, what do you think is reproduction? So reproduction is a biological process where the parents are going to give rise to offsprings which are similar to them biologically as well as genetically. And why do you think it's important? It's important because suppose all the organisms decided that we are not going to reproduce. Do you think their species would be continuing? No. So for continuity of the species, we need reproduction. Second thing, for maintenance of what? The population size, my dear children. If a population size is not being maintained, what will happen? The ecosystem which is there, where one organism is relying on another organism, that particular cycle will be disturbed. Okay, and also reproduction is that something that will give rise to variations. What do you mean by variation? Basically, you and me are quite different. Probably you might be able to survive during any difficult situation, as in climatic situation, but I might not be able to survive. I might get cold, I might get pneumonia, there might be some problem happening in my body, but you might be able to resist it because you have the variations in you. Okay, and where do we get these variations from? How does this variation occur? Basically, the root cause of this variation is changes in the DNA. It is what? Changes in the DNA, and also a process which is known as what? Reproduction. Because what happens in reproduction, my dear children, for example, think that I am going to reproduce. Over here, my genetic material have to be passed down to my progenies. When I am doing so, I am not giving my genetic material, I am going to make a copy of it and I am going to send it to my progenies with the help of the gamete cells. While I am making a copy of my genetic material, that is the DNA, there might be certain errors happening. There might be certain errors happening which might accumulate and bring out variation in my progeny. And moreover, we humans do what? Sexual reproduction. And in sexual reproduction, you have more amount of variation. Why? Because it's not just about DNA copying, it's about two individuals. It's about two individuals, different DNA coming together in a progeny. So two different DNA genetic material is coming together in a progeny. That means what? Obviously, that progeny has to be different from both of us. Okay, so variations occurs because of DNA. DNA stands for what? Deoxyribonucleic acid. DNA carries what, children? DNA carries genes. Is a very important concept. Okay, so I hope you know it. This is DNA. The segments of the DNA, no, they are known as gene, and each gene is going to code for some protein. This protein can be anything. This protein can be an enzyme which would help in the conversion of A to B, and B might be some very important thing, or this protein might be some pigment in our body such as hemoglobin, or probably it might be melanin which gives a skin color. There are a lot of things being produced with the help of proteins, but proteins is something that we need for sure. Okay, and the proteins are being coded by genes. So any changes in the DNA, suppose this DNA has some changes, what will happen? This gene will also change, this protein will also change, this thing won't be produced, and this pigment might be something else. So you never know. So these type of fluctuations happens in our body. Okay, generally happens in our body, and this gives rise to what? Variations. So genes are what? Sections of DNA that contain the set of instructions to produce one specific molecule in your body, usually a protein. These proteins, they control how the body grows and works. So variations occur due to errors during DNA replication or duplication. So whenever this particular DNA strand decides that I have to duplicate myself so that other two cells also get my DNA, what do? Basically, they have to open up. Ayo, yeah. First thing that they do is they have to open up. Okay, see, they opened up. Suppose this is one strand, this is the other strand. Now a new copy of it is being made over here. Here also a new copy of this is being made. Now you have two DNA strands, my dear children, which have arisen from this particular DNA. So this is known as DNA replication or DNA copying, but while copying there are so many errors that usually happens. And this gives rise to what? Variations. Now variation can be good, variation can be bad. Bad variation can lead to diseases also. So which mode of reproduction leads to more amount of variation? Okay, so you have sexual mode, you have asexual mode. You have to tell me. Basically in sexual mode, what is happening? Two different parents are coming together. There is fusion of gametes, my dear children. Very important point. What is happening? There is presence of fertilization. That means there is fusion of gametes. The sperm and the egg is basically coming together to form something that is known as what? A zygote. The sperm is carrying what? The father's genetic material. The egg is carrying what? The mother's genetic material. Both of them are coming together in the progeny, in the zygote, my dear children. Okay, so over here 2 parents are involved. Now the child which is there, it is going to get the DNA of both of these parents, which would make it different from this parent as well as this parent. I am not entirely similar to any of my parents. I have some similarity with both of my parents. I am not entirely similar to my mother, no. I have some similarity with my mother, I have some similarity with my father, because both of them contributed to the genetic material to me. So I will say sexual reproduction is where you will be finding more amount of variations, my dear children, because 2 different genetic material is coming together. And also, as I said, when the parent is giving the DNA, they are not giving their own DNA, they are making a duplicate copy of it. While they are making so, what happens, children? There are errors being caused. So there are 2 reasons why sexual reproduction has more amount of variation. One reason being there are 2 parents being involved, so 2 genetic material, and another reason being error during the DNA copying mechanism. Whereas when you talk about asexual mode of reproduction, here only 1 parent is being involved. There is no fusion of gametes. Do you think fusion of gametes is there? Fertilization is there? Nothing is being there. Okay, so basically over here parent 1 is going to give their DNA to the progeny, that's all. But while it does so, there might be certain copying. Again, it has to copy and send the DNA, right? So there might be errors during DNA copying mechanism, which leads to what? Variation. So in asexual reproduction also you find variation, but not as much as what you find in sexual mode of reproduction. I hope you got it. Now, talking about the asexual mode of reproduction, first we will cover the asexual mode of reproduction, then we will talk about the sexual. So in asexual mode of reproduction, the first one is fission, my dear children. What is it? Fission. What do you mean by fission? Fission means an organism is going to break its body. Okay, break its body into basically 2 parts or more than 2 parts. When it is going to break its body into 2 parts, and those 2 parts are going to be the new individuals, you call this as binary fission. What do you call this as? Binary fission. So for example, this is an organism. What do you call this organism as? Leishmania. Please remember, this is Leishmania. So Leishmania, as you see over here, it has 1 flagella over here. It is now making a new flagella over here. The nucleus which is there, over here, it is also getting duplicated. The flagella is getting increased. Now slowly it is going to divide its body into 2, and now you would be having 2 Leishmania at the end. So this is known as binary fission, where an organism is dividing into 2, and these are the 2 new individuals which are being formed over here. Okay, what is this? This is Leishmania, my dear children, and Leishmania shows longitudinal binary fission. Longitudinal means it has a fixed axis. It is going to get cut like this. So they have a fixed axis, and that is longitudinal axis. Okay, and the usual question that comes is, what is the difference between the binary fission, or basically the reproduction method of Leishmania as well as amoeba? So in amoeba's case, they are going to show simple binary fission or irregular binary fission. That means they do not have a plane for cutting their body into 2. Instead, they are going to cut it through any angle. Through any angle they can cut, which is why it is known as simple binary fission or irregular binary fission. They do not have a perfect axis for cutting. Okay, now transverse binary fission is there, where they are going to cut from the middle for sure. So this is the example of transverse binary fission. What is the organism's name? Paramecium. It is paramecium, where it is going to get cut like this, and now you have 2 daughter paramecium. You got it? So this is fission. In fission, the first method of fission is binary fission, where an organism is going to divide into 2, my dear children. So these are the examples. Please remember, Leishmania. Leishmania is that particular thing that causes kala-azar or sleeping sickness. So the question might come, which type of reproduction does the organism shows which causes kala-azar or basically sleeping sickness? You should be knowing it is Leishmania, and it shows what? Longitudinal binary fission. Cool. Now we have some other type of fission also, which is known as multiple fission. What do you mean by multiple fission? Where the organism is not going to just divide its body into 2. It will be producing so many individuals from one single organism. So basically what happens is, you have the most famous parasite, which is known as Plasmodium, my dear children. Plasmodium is the malarial parasite. It causes malaria, and it shows something that is known as multiple fission. What exactly happens up over here? So you have the nucleus up over here. The nucleus keeps on dividing. Listen to me very carefully. The nucleus is going to keep on dividing. Okay, and later, one more thing happens, that is they are going to form a cyst around them. They are going to form a protective covering around them, and they are going to stay in unfavorable situations like that. Whenever they see there is a favorable situation, they break open the cyst and the nucleus comes out. But this time the nucleus is surrounded by a little bit of cytoplasm, such that they are giving rise to lots of small plasmodium again. Okay, so basically nuclear division happens continuously. Later, after that, the cytoplasm comes and surrounds it a little bit, and then it is being moved out. with the help through the cyst. Okay, so this is Plasmodium. The question usually comes, which type of reproduction does that organism show, which is a malarial parasite? So this is Plasmodium, and Plasmodium shows multiple fission. And one more question comes, that is, what is the difference between binary and multiple fission? So binary, you give rise to 2 daughter individuals. Why do you say daughter? Because that organism can give rise to more individuals. So only females generally has the ability to give rise to organisms, which is why it is known as daughter. Okay, so it gives rise to 2 daughter individuals. Multiple fission, it forms many daughter individuals. Now binary fission, it occurs during favorable condition. Binary fission generally happens amoeba when it is in a good mood. Okay, why we'll do binary fission, but basically multiple fission happens during favorable condition in the case of Plasmodium, but amoeba also do multiple fission when the situations are not favorable. For Plasmodium it's a normal situation, but for amoeba it's quite different. Now nucleus of the parent cell divides only once. This is important. The nucleus of the parent cell, that is the amoeba, divides only once, and then it later separates, right? So basically over here in the case of multiple fission, nucleus of the parent cell undergoes repeated to form number of daughter nuclei, right? And the cytoplasm divides after nucleation. So once in the amoeba the nucleus has divided, at that point itself the cytoplasm also divides. But over here the cytoplasm does not divide after every nuclear division. You saw that the nucleus is keeping on dividing, and then later on little amount of cytoplasm is going to surround each part of it. You get it? So that is why it is different. Now no part of the parent body is left unused. Everything that is there is being used. Okay, so the amoeba is there, it divides into 2 daughter amoeba. Now we say everything that was there in this amoeba has been given to the daughter amoebae. Now over here the part of the body covering and the residual cytoplasm is little amount of thing is being left behind. Example is amoeba paramecium, example is Plasmodium and amoeba, but amoeba in ancestor stage. That means in unfavorable condition it forms a cyst around it, that stage. Remember Plasmodium, that will be much better. Now fission is done. Next mode of reproduction is fragmentation. So fragmentation is basically when an organism is going to divide its body into different fragments. Okay, suppose this is an organism. Okay, what do you call this organism as? It is known as Spirogyra. It is known as Spirogyra. So Spirogyra, which looks like this, it is going to divide its body, suppose, okay, into this segment and then this segment. Now a new Spirogyra is going to be formed over here. So they are going to fragment their body, and from their body there is a new part being regenerating. What do you call this process as? Regeneration. Please remember, regeneration is not a mode of reproduction. Instead, after fragmentation, what happens? Regeneration is the process that continues. Okay, so this is the breaking of the body. Who all shows this? Planaria also shows this. So planaria usually does not show this, but during unfavorable condition. For example, we go and cut planaria like this. Okay, so you have this part, you have this part, you have this part. The planaria itself will be regenerating its body like this. The lost parts will be regenerated. Okay, so it has underwent fragmentation, we did it. Okay, but anyways, it had made its lost body parts, and this is known as regeneration. Regeneration is not a mode of asexual reproduction. It is just basically you want to continue the fragmentation, so you do this. Now Hydra is also like that. Hydra's main asexual mode of reproduction is what? Budding. We'll talk about that. But as of now, I'm just saying it also, if it is cut, it has the power to regenerate its body. It has the power to regenerate its body. So basically under fragmentation we spoke about planaria, Hydra, as well as what? Spirogyra. Okay, this is not their actual mode of reproduction. I'm telling you again, this is done during unfavorable situations. Okay. Now, budding is the thing that Hydra usually does. This is a Hydra, and these things that you see over here, they are buds. Now, you see a new bud is being formed. Later on, this bud develops into new Hydra, and later on, it moves apart from the body. So, why are they able to make these, buds over here? Because over here, they have so many regenerative cells, my dear children. They have regenerative cells. So few multicellular organisms produce small buds. The buds develops into an outgrowth due to what? The repeated cell division. The cell division is happening repeatedly. Now these buds develop into tiny individuals, and when fully mature, detach from the parent body and becomes what? New independent individuals. So apart from Hydra, there is one more guy, that is what? Yeast. Yeast is a fungus, my dear children. Yeast is the only unicellular fungus. Yeast is the only unicellular fungus, and they show budding as well. So over here also, what is the difference between them and them? You saw there's a bud being formed, it's a new individual being formed, and later it detaches. But over here, the buds keeps on forming, it forms a chain sort of thing, and later it detaches. So that is something that is different. So it is yeast. Budding is also observed in yeast. Is in a unicellular organism. A small protuberance appears on the upper part of an adult cell. This gradually grows in size. From this newly budded cell, another bud appears at the tip. Cool. So this is there. Chalo. Now comes the next thing, that is spore formation. What do we have, children? Spore formation. What happens exactly in spore formation? So we are done with budding, we are done with fragmentation, we are done with this guy, that is fission. Now spore formation is shown by bread mold, or what do you call as rhizopus. This is very much important. They ask you to draw the diagram as well. Okay, this is rhizopus, or you also call it as bread mold. Okay, so basically the thing that you see over here, this is hyphae, this is hyphae, this thing that you see over here, this is also made up of hyphae. So hyphae is like tiny filamental structures, okay, which comes together to form a thick structure like this over here, which you call as mycelium. Now at the top of the mycelium you see this blob-like structure, you call this as sporangium. What do you call? Sporangium. Inside the sporangium, what do you have? Spores, my dear children. And the spores which are there, they have a cyst around it. They have a protective covering around it. So these spores are being dispersed into nature. They are being dispersed into nature and they sit like that until favorable situation comes. When the favorable situation comes, they are going to make a structure again like this. They are going to reproduce again. This is how the things work over there. Okay, so spore formation, okay, just a second. Yes, spore formation is a common form of asexual reproduction which occurs in rhizopus. Spores are minute. They ask you, why do you think spore formation is really important during unfavorable situation? Because what? They are minute, single cell, thin or thick walled propagules released from the parent body from tiny blob and stick like structures, that is sporangium and things like that. Generally, spores are dispersive in nature and able to withstand what? Unfavorable environmental conditions such as dryness, extreme heat and cold, which is why it is being released. Okay, so this is how the bread mold, the things that you see on the bread, it reproduces. Okay, so there's questions like this, please try to solve it. Now talking about the plants. Okay, in plants, what do you call this process as? We do not say asexual reproduction in the case of plants. We rather say it is what? Vegetative propagation. What do we call it? Vegetative propagation. So, what's the difference between vegetative propagation and sexual reproduction in the case of plants? In sexual reproduction in the case of plants, what was happening? The pollen grains were going there on the stigma, landing there, and basically the male and the female gametes are fusing. Over here, you are not going to see any male and female gametes over here. You are not going to see flowers over here. The vegetative parts of the plant are going to reproduce. That means the stem is going to reproduce, the leaf is going to reproduce, the root is going to reproduce. Have you ever seen that reproducing? No, it's the flower that is the reproductive part, but that is not being used over here. All the vegetative parts are being used over here. Okay, so there is no involvement of the seeds. There is no formation of the seeds, my dear children. Remember that. Basically, seed formation happens when the male and the female gametes comes together. It forms zygote, and the ovule is now, ovule where all this thing is happening is now known as what? Seed. But over here, anyway, fertilization is not happening, so there is no formation of seed as well. Now, you have two different types of vegetative propagation. One is natural and the other one is what? Artificial vegetative propagation. Now, there is very important significance of vegetative propagation. Why do you think it's important? First thing, even the plants that do not produce viable seeds. So there are certain plants which produce seeds, but these seeds are not viable. Even if we have put it somewhere, it won't be growing into a new plant. For example, talking about banana do not have viable seeds. So how to reproduce them? You can use this technique, that is what? Vegetative propagation. So even seedless plants or plants which does not have viable seeds can reproduce. Second thing, plants that produce seeds and also reproduce can give rise to clones also. Right? For example, there is a plant, there is a very good variety of plant. Now, it want to create copies of itself, some organism that does look like itself only. If you are undergoing sexual reproduction, there are higher chances that you are bringing out variations. Now, I do not want that to happen. Basically, I just want organism just like me because I have very good features in myself. I am a plant, I have very good features, I am disease tolerant, there are no pests that can eat me. So basically, I can have my own clones with the help of this method. Now, one more thing, vegetative propagation is really faster than other sexual mode of reproduction. There you have to wait for the pollen to come, land, that. So yes, please remember these 3 points, very important, they ask you. Now, as I said, there are two modes. One is natural vegetative propagation where we are not doing anything. The plant itself is going to propagate vegetatively. So over here you see potato. It's the most famous thing. So let's talk about potato first. Okay. So in the case of potato, this thing that you see the buds are there over here. These are buds, my dear children. If we are going to plant this potato inside the soil, it will give rise to a whole new potato plant. So over here, do you see flowers being formed? It's just this particular thing that is giving rise to buds, and these buds are giving rise to the plant. So vegetative part of the plant is being used. What do you think this part is? What do you think this part is? Well, this is a stem. I know you might not believe, but this is the stem. So what happens is that, suppose this is the stem of the potato plant. The stem goes and enlarges over here, okay, and it will definitely have roots also. So roots are over there. Okay, the roots are over there, but the stem over here has enlarged to form something like this, okay, which is known as what? Tuber. This is known as stem tuber. And just like how stems have nodes, okay, and stems have buds, similarly over here this stem will also have certain buds which are going to give rise to a whole new organism. So over here you see a vegetative part of the plant is going to reproduce with the help of the buds that are being there. Get it? So without the interference of a human, if a plant grows naturally through vegetative parts, then it is known as vegetative propagation. Over here you see the next example. This is the case of bryophyllum, my dear children. This is the case of bryophyllum. So at the notches of the leaf, you see buds like this. You see buds like this. These buds that you see over here, my dear children, they are going to fall off. They are going to fall off and give rise to a whole new plant. Again, do you see fission of gamete? Nothing is there. So this is an example of bryophyllum. Cool? Works? So without the interference of a human, if the plant grows naturally through vegetative parts, then it is known as what? Vegetative propagation. Cool? Now next thing, over here also, this is what? Sweet potato. This is sweet potato. How does it reproduce? Again, for example, this is the stem. The stem basically has roots, right? The stem basically has roots. The roots over here are going to enlarge. The roots over here are going to enlarge, and these roots basically they are going to have buds, as you see over here, and these can give rise to what? A whole new plant. Again, this is naturally done. We are not doing anything in there. Right? Now let's talk about artificial vegetative propagation, where we are going to help. With the interference of humans, if a plant grows, then it is known as artificial vegetative propagation. The first method is cutting. So basically what do you do in cutting? For example, this is the plant part. This is the plant part. Now you cut a part which basically has a node or something like that. Now you are going to plant this part somewhere else. You're going to plant this part somewhere else, and that from that place there is a new plant arising. So over here again you saw the stem is being taken, which has a bud over here, and it is being taken, it is dipped in auxin and some hormones, okay, so the growth hormones are there. It is dipped in that and later put in the soil so that it grows into a new plant there. So this is known as cutting. So cutting is the method used for vegetative propagation, where the vegetative part of the stem is cut and buried in the soil. The part which is used to cutting has the nodes which has axillary buds. What do you mean by axillary buds? The buds that arises over here, the small buds that arises usually over here, they are known as axillary buds. Now if the buds are arising somewhere else, then you call them as adventitious buds. Just give me a second, my dear children. Where is it? Yes, and the examples for this is rose and sugarcane, my dear children, please remember that. Okay, yeah, so I was saying, I don't remember if I said that, axillary buds are being found over here. You had adventitious buds from anywhere else. If the buds are arising, you call them adventitious buds, apart from the nodes over here. Okay, next thing, you have grafting, my dear children. In grafting, what happens? For example, I have a plant which has great flowers, okay, some rose or something like that. And then I have another plant which has great roots, it has disease resistance and everything. Now I want both the features in one particular plant. What do? I cut the plant which has good flowers, I keep the plant which has the good roots and system like that. Later, I am going to make a cut over here, incision over here, and I am going to insert the other plant which has great flowers. Okay, now I am going to cover it up with the help of glues and stuff like that. Okay, not the glue that we use at home. Okay, and later allow it to have a common xylem and phloem. So they have separate xylem and phloem. The xylem and phloem has to combine together. That's when the food and the water will be going to the upper part of the plant, right? So this is known as grafting, my dear children. Okay, the part that you're putting on something, you call this a scion, and the part which is already there, it is known as stalk. So scion and stalk. So grafting is the act of placing a portion of one plant into or on a stem, root, or a branch of another in such a way that a union will be formed and the partners will continue to grow. The part of the combination that provides the root is called stalk. The added piece is known as scion. Cool. And now we have one more method that is known as layering. What do you mean by layering? Basically, what you're going to do is that you have a plant, and the plant will have nodes and everything. You're going to take that plant and going to put it under the soil and cover it, the area which has the nodes. What will happen? Slowly there will be roots and everything being grown and a new plant being grown. For some time, you will make sure that this plant is connected to this plant, so you get nutrition and everything. It will need some time to make the roots, right? So it has to have the nutrition. So it will get from it for some time, and later you cut this off and now you have a separate plant. You do this in the case of Jasmine. My name is Jasmine and this is also done as Jasmine. So this is known as layering, my dear children. Okay, again you are making a new plant without fusion of gametes. Now, there is one more thing that is known as tissue culture. What do you mean by tissue culture? Basically, you know, the plant tips and everything, no? The plant tips, no? It basically has a lot of cells over here. Meristematic cells. Okay, what do you call them? Meristematic cells, which has the capacity to divide and give rise to a whole new plant. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a small tissue. Okay, I'm going to take a small tissue from there. I'll call this as X plant. What do I call this as? X plant. Now it is not a plant part of the plant. I call it X plant. I'm going to put this X plant into a medium which will give rise to individual, it will help in the cell division and stuff like that. Okay, it is now going to form a mass of cells which is known as what? Callus. It is known as callus. Now callus is there. I want it to form shoots and the roots. So I am going to put it in a medium that has the rooting hormone and the shooting hormone. So it will slowly form the roots and the shoots as well. Once it forms the root and the shoot, what I am going to do is that I am going to put it another soil and going to put it in soil such that it gives rise to what? A whole new plant. So this callus is then transferred to another nutrient medium where it differentiates and form a new plant, and from there it is being put to another place. Okay, and you get new plantlets. So this is known as tissue culture, where basically you are taking a part of the tissue and then you're culturing a new plant over there. Okay, so that is tissue culture, and with this we are going to end asexual mode of reproduction. Now we are going to begin the next thing, that is sexual mode of reproduction. So once we'll start with plants and then we'll go ahead with animals. Okay, that is human beings. So in the case of what happens in sexual reproduction, very important question. In sexual reproduction, as I said, there is fusion of gametes, my dear children. One very important thing that you should be definitely knowing is that when I say fusion of gametes is there, you should remember that if the parent, suppose, if the parent has 46 number of chromosomes in his cell, okay, this is parent 1, and suppose this is parent 2. Similarly, she will also be having 46 number of chromosomes in the cell. Suppose they are giving rise to sperm as well as egg with 46 number of chromosomes. When the sperm and the egg comes together, you get 92 number of chromosomes, which is not normal. Each and every cell of the body of this particular parent has 46. This cell also has 46. Now, if a cell is being aroused over here, that is a zygote, which has 92 number of chromosomes, that will be a huge disaster. So basically, the first thing that they have to do is reduce the number of chromosomes. So that means the parent cell which is there, which is going to form a sperm, the parent cell which is there, which is going to form an egg, okay, both of them, they have to undergo a step, a process which is known as meiosis. It is also known as reductional division. It is also known as reductional division. Why? Because over here the cell is going to divide and give rise to 2 cells. Over here also give rise to 2 cells, and here the number of chromosomes will be reduced to half. There will be 23 chromosomes each. It is reducing, the number of chromosomes have been reduced. This is known as meiosis 1. So remember, meiosis happens in 2 stages. This is meiosis 1. Again, one more stage happens where this cell will also divide into 2. This cell also divides into 2. This cell divides into 2. This cell also divides into 2. So basically, remember again. Okay, so over here it is going to give rise to 23. Again, there is no halving. In M2 phase of meiosis, there is no halving, or whatever halving was there, it happened over here only. Okay, so this is the parent one which is going to produce sperm. So all these cells are going to form these sperms. All of them are going to have 23 pair of chromosomes. Sorry, 23 number of, not 23 pair of chromosome, 23 number of chromosome. 23 pair means 46 chromosome are there. 23 into 2. Pair means 23 into 46 number of chromosomes. So don't make that mistake. They have 23 number of chromosomes. In the case of females, things are quite different. There will be only one ovum being produced. At the end of the division, there will be only one ovum being produced, my dear children. Okay, so that we will study in 12th grade. But as of now, please remember there will be only one functional ovum. Anyway, it will be having 23 number of chromosomes. So this process is known as meiosis or reductional division. This is done so that when this 23 and when this 23 comes, it becomes 46 number of chromosome, and you are maintaining the number of chromosomes just like how the parent cell usually had. Always remember, in sexual reproduction, meiosis is going to happen. Please remember that. Okay. Now, okay, talking about the male and the female reproductive parts in the case of plants. Okay, the female reproductive part is known as carpel, or you call it as pistil. Pistil has three very important parts. One is the stigma right over here. This is the style. This thing that you see is the ovary, and the ovary, inside the ovary you will be having what? This particular region that you see, it is known as the ovule. Okay, stigma, style, ovary, and then inside that ovule. Always remember, ovule is the place where the female gametes will be there. Ovule is not the female gamete. Ovule has the female gamete, my dear children. It has the female gamete. It is not the female gamete. Okay. Now, talking about the male part, it is known as stamen. It is known as stamen. So, this is known as pistil, or it is known as gynoecium. There it is known as stamen. It is known as androecium. What is in there? What are the different parts? So, over here you see, this is one part that is known as filament. Over here they have two blob-like structure which is known as what? Anther. Which is known as anther. Now, it is just going to act like the ovary. Ovary had what? Ovule, my dear children. Similarly, the anther will be having pollen grains. The anther will be having pollen grains. What did the ovule have? Ovule had the female gametes. The pollen grains are going to have. It is not the male gamete. It has the male gametes. So, anther is there. Inside the anther you have pollen grains. Inside the pollen you have what? Basically the male gametes. Okay, remember that. Now, other parts are also there. You have the petals and you have the sepals. When the petals they come together, you call this as corolla. When the you call this as corolla. A group of petals, you call this as corolla. The group of sepals, you call this as what? Calyx, my dear children. Now, over here, one very important thing, in your book it is given as an example. There are certain flowers which have either carpel or either stamen. You call these flowers as unisexual flowers. They just have one sex in them, which is why you call them unisexual flowers. PW is the example, papaya and watermelon. It might have resemblance to any coaching centers, please don't mind. Papaya and watermelon, they are unisexual. There are either carpel or stamen. Okay. Now, over here on the other hand, there are flowers that contains both carpel as well as stamen. You call them as bisexual flowers. Example is H&M. Clothes, you buy it from H&M, right? So, hibiscus and mustard. Hibiscus and mustard, basically H&M store has bisexual clothes. Anyone can wear it. So, you can remember like that. Okay. Bisexual flower means, suppose this is a flower. Okay. Suppose this is a flower. It will be having both the carpel as well as the stamen. Cool? Works. So, now what is pollination? Pollination basically means transfer of pollen grains, okay, from the anther to what? The stigma of the flower. From the anther to the stigma of the flower. Now, there are two types of pollination. One is self-pollination and the other one is cross-pollination. Listen to me very carefully. I am going to explain you right over here. So, suppose this is a flower. From here to here, within the same plant, if pollen grains are getting transferred, you call this as self-pollination. Similarly, this particular plant has another flower, and from here to here pollen grains are transferred, but within the same plant itself you still call it what? Self-pollination. Whereas on the other hand, you have separate plant and over here you have flower, you have the stigma, stamen and everything. I am not making a proper diagram, just for your understanding. So, from here to here if things are going, this is one plant, this is one plant, you see two parents are being involved. This is known as cross-pollination. This is known as cross-pollination. Don't think that self-pollination is asexual mode of reproduction. No, children. One parent is there, I agree, but male and the female gamete are coming and fusing, and that means sexual reproduction is happening over here. Here, you see more amount of variation. This is a question. In which mode of pollination do you see more amount of variation? Cross-pollination, because two parents are being involved. Two different genetic materials coming together. Okay? Works? Works? Chalo. Now, there are external agents also which you need for pollination. These are known as pollinating agents. Okay, these are known as pollinators or basically pollinating agents. So, you have abiotic agents such as wind and water and everything. Okay, and you have biotic agents such as insects, birds and things like that. Fine. Now, cross-pollination will bring out more amount of genetic variation, as I already told you. Next thing, what happens after pollination? One very important question. What will happen after pollination, my dear children? So, pollination means you have the pollen grains. Okay, pollination means you have the pollen grains. Now, listen to me carefully. With this, I am going to explain you a lot of things. Okay. See, so this is the style, this is the ovary. Okay. This is the stigma, this is the style, and this is the ovary. Inside the ovary, what do you have? You have the ovule. Inside the ovule, what do you have, children? You have the female gamete. But it's not just the female gamete, there are other cells also. So there are cells over here which you call as synergids. There are cells over here, 3 of them, which you call as antipodal. And there are 2 polar nuclei also here. There are 2 polar nuclei. The nuclei is separately just lying over there, and this cell which holds this particular nuclei, this is the biggest cell over here, and this is known as the central cell. The central cell has the 2 polar nuclei. Now what happens is that the pollen grain comes and lands, and the pollen grains has 2 male gametes. How many male gametes? 2 male gametes. So pollen grains, once it lands, everything is fine here. There is chemical coordination and everything happening. If everything is fine here, they are going to make a tube like this. They are going to make a tube like this. In this tube, one male gamete that comes is going to fuse with the female gamete. So one female gamete plus one male gamete gets fused, and what do you get as a result? You get the result as zygote. Okay, this is what a zygote being formed. So male gamete have half the number of chromosome, that is, you say n number of chromosome. This also have n number of chromosome. The zygote will be having 2n number of chromosome, that is double the amount of chromosome. It will be okay now. The zygote has enough. Okay, now this process is known as syngamy, or you call this as fertilization. Now over here, what happens to the 2 polar nuclei? Let's see that. So the next male gamete comes over here and fuses with the 2 male gametes. Sorry, the 2 polar nuclei that is present over here. So 2 polar nuclei plus the second male gamete fuses. Now over here, if you see, there are 2 nuclei and the male gamete will also have a nucleus. So 1, 2, 3 nucleus. So I'll say triple fusion is happening over here. This process is known as what? Triple fusion. Here you call it a syngamy. This is known as triple fusion. And what is the end result of this? What do you get from this? You get something that is known as endosperm, my dear children. What do you get? Endosperm. So you have zygote over here, you have endosperm being formed over here. What is the use of this endosperm? This endosperm is going to provide what? Nourishment. This endosperm is going to provide nourishment to the growing embryo. Okay, the zygote has to form into an embryo. So this process requires nourishment. For that, the endosperm is being formed. Now over here, if you see, there is one fertilization happening over here. There is another fertilization happening over here, which is why you call both of them together as what? Double fertilization. Now listen to me carefully. Once this happens, one zygote formation is taking place over here. Now you are going to call the ovule. The fertilized ovule is now going to be known as what? Seed. This is going to be known as the seed. What happens to the ovary? The ovary is now going to transform into what? Fruit. So this is the fruit, and inside what do you find? Oh, seed. And inside the seed, what is there? Zygote, which is why we are going to put seeds in the soil, because it has a zygote. It can give rise to a whole new plant again. I hope you get it. So ovary is the fruit, ovule is the seed. Please remember it. After fertilization, this happens. Okay, if you want to take a screenshot, you can take a screenshot. Okay. Now next thing. So this is the thing that happens, and the place where it enters, you call this region as micropyle. Please remember, you call this region as micropyle. Now, also remember one more thing. What happens is that the endosperm is being utilized by plants. The endosperm is being utilized by plants usually, while the zygote is transformed into embryo. Once it happens, once the embryo is being formed, basically during development, embryo says that I am going to use all the endosperm and I am going to make my own reserve unit, storage reserve unit. What I am going to call it? I am going to call it as cotyledons. So basically, there are embryo that has 2 cotyledons like this. Okay, there are embryo that has 1 cotyledon only. The one that has 2 cotyledons, you call them as dicots. And over here, you see the embryo. Embryo is still there. It has 2, reserve. Okay, food reserve. This part of the embryo which is going to form the shoot is known as plumule. This part of the embryo which is going to form the root is known as radicle. Remember, you might be asked to label it. So plumule is there, radicle is there. Plumule is going to give rise to the shoot system, and the radicle is going to give rise to the root system. This is a dicot plant. Chickpea is a dicot. You divide, you see 2 cotyledons. Now you have wheat. Wheat you cannot divide. It just has 1 cotyledon which is known as monocot. They are known as monocot. Cool, works. So this is an example of monocot. Here also, you see this is also an example of monocot. This is this. It has just one cotlet. Okay, chalo. So we are done with sexual reproduction in the case of plants also. Now let's do organisms, that is basically human beings, and then we are done with what? That also, and then we are finishing the revision series. So is puberty and adolescence the same, my dear children? No, it is not the same. What do you mean by puberty? What do you mean by adolescence? Adolescence is basically a transition phase from childhood to what? Adulthood. Now during this phase, there is a time where we are going to hit puberty. So this is a period that typically begins during late childhood or early adolescence. It is a period during which an organism attains sexual maturity. So during the adolescence, where the transition is happening between childhood to adulthood, once in this phase only, there is a time where we are going to hit sexual maturity, and that particular period is known as what? Puberty. So there are certain changes that happens when we hit puberty, and these are known as secondary sexual characters. These changes that we are having in our body are secondary sexual characters, characters which are visible at the time of sexual maturation of the body. So there are few things that are common to both male and the female. What are those? Thick hair growth in the pubic region and the armpits. Okay, that is found in both female and the male. Thin hair appear on the leg and the arms as well as on the face also. The skin frequently becomes oily, and there might be occurrence of acne, which is why when we hit puberty, all of us might have had acne, or you might be still having acne. Okay, so these are the secondary sexual characters which are common to male and female. Very important question. Now talking about the next thing, there are certain character which is unique to females only. First thing, breast size, which is there, it begins to increase. Second thing, the darkening of the skin of the nipple region. At that point also there will be darkening of the skin. Now menstruation also begins. Menstruation is what? Basically the uterus of a female is always basically being ready for fertilization to happen. The male and the female gamete refuses, it thinks a zygote is formed. This zygote which is there, it has to have nourishment, and this nourishment is provided with the help of uterus. So every time there is one ovum being released in every single month in the case of females, and which is why every time the uterus thinks that okay, fertilization might happen, I have to make a thin lining over there, or sorry, thick lining over there, which could provide nourishment if fertilization has happened. But what happens? We are all children, we know, we are not of age, basically fertilization would not be happening. The uterus is going to shut down that particular layer which it has formed. That is menstruation. Now deposition of fat is also found in various areas like thighs and hips, and there is high pitched voice in the case of females. Whereas when we talk about males, there is what? Thick hair growth on the face, voice begins to crack and becomes deep, body it becomes what? Lot more muscular. There will be enlargement of testes, scrotum as well as penis. Now okay, yes, so let's talk about the male reproductive system, and then we are going to go ahead. Okay, so what is given in your book, we are going to just discuss about that, nothing else, my dear children. So let me just make a small diagram fast. Okay, first thing first, suppose this is the abdominal region of a male. The abdominal region have pouch-like structures which is known as what? Scrotum, my dear children. The scrotum basically has the testis. It has the testis. Why it is located outside the abdominal cavity? Because in the scrotum. Why? Because the sperm formation which is happening in the testis requires 2 to 2.5 degrees Celsius lower than the normal body temperature. So sperm formation happens in the testis. Apart from that, one more thing happens in the testis, that is formation of male sex hormones such as testosterone. My dear children. So these are the two major functions of testis. Now from testis, the sperms are being carried to what? To the urinary bladder. From the urinary bladder, things are going to come, and then with the help of the penis, the sperm moves out. So basically there should be someone who could transport the sperm, right? And this system is known as the duct system, the accessory duct. This is known as the accessory duct who transports it. Now there should be someone who provides nourishment to the sperms. This is done by the accessory glands. This is done by the accessory glands. Okay, so let me show you how things work. So over here, suppose this is a testis. Suppose this is a testis. Okay, in the testis there are so many separate units like this which you call as testicular lobules. Inside that you have seminiferous tubules where the sperms are going to form. From here the things are being transported to the duct. First duct that comes is tubular recti. It is not given in your NCERT. I am not going to teach you as well. Over here you have the next duct which is rated testis. From rated testis things go out with the help of vasa efferentia, and then comes something that is known as epididymis. Okay, these are all duct system. They are all going to carry things. And from here comes our major guy, which is known as what? Vas deferens, which is given in your NCERT. So vas deferens is the one, the last duct, which is going to carry things from the testis to the upper part of the body. Okay, that is in the abdominal region. Now over here, in the case of males, they have the urinary bladder as well. They have their urinary bladder as well. Okay, now what happens is that this urinary bladder opens into something which is known as what? Urethra. And here comes our guy, this is the, okay, so here comes our guy, that is vas deferens. From here also you get vas deferens from both the sides. Now comes the role of the first accessory gland. Here you have the first accessory gland, okay, just a second. Here you will be getting the secretion of the first accessory gland, which is known as the seminal vesicle. What do you call it as? Seminal vesicle. It is going to give fructose to the sperm so that the sperm have the energy to move around. Okay. Now both of them, they are going to open into something else which is known as ejaculatory duct. You don't need to remember that. Later is going to open into urethra. So can I say urethra is going to act as a common passage? It is going to act like a common passage between what? Between sperm and urine. So urine and sperm are being carried to the same thing, that is urethra in the case of male. Now this is being covered, okay, this whole structure which is being formed over here, this thing that you know is known as what? Penis. Now one more thing, it's not just a seminal vesicle, apart from it also you have other things. There will be a prostate gland over here, children. Prostate gland is like a donut through which everything passes through. Okay, so this is a prostate gland, this is another accessory gland. Prostate gland provides calcium and everything to the sperm. Then there is another gland over here, okay, which looks like a bulb. You call them bulbourethral gland, or you call it as Cowper's gland. So anyways, this seminal vesicle, this prostate gland, the Cowper's gland together, they are all going to give rise to some secretion which is known as seminal plasma, which is given in your NCERT. It is going to give rise to what? Seminal plasma. So these secretions, seminal plasma plus the sperms together, what do you call this as? You call this as semen. Seminal plasma plus the sperm, you call this as semen. Seminal plasma is there for nourishment of the sperms. Okay, now one very important thing I'm going to teach you here itself. Okay, there is something that is known as contraception, where basically birth control mechanism is being applied. So in the case of males, how they can contribute to birth control mechanism, there is a method that is surgical method, where in the case of males, they are going to cut the vas deferens like this and they are going to tie it up. The vas deferens is being cut and tied up. What's the use of this? The sperms which are being formed over here, they are not going to get transported. They are not going to get transported. If the sperms are not there, do you think fertilization is going to happen? No. So this is known as vasectomy. This is known as vasectomy, my dear children. This is surgical method of contraception. Okay, vasectomy, where the vas deferens is being cut. Now over here, don't you think that the person will still ejaculate? He will be still ejaculating because there is seminal plasma still being produced. It does not know the sperm is not coming. It will still release. Get it? Yeah. So that's all about the male thing. Okay, I hope you remember how much degrees Celsius lower should be there and everything. Now comes the female reproductive system. Over here you have, children, just like how you have the primary sex organ as testes in the case of males, here you have ovaries as the primary sex organ, because the ovaries are the one which is going to release what? Ovum plus the female hormones, which is estrogen and progesterone. Now the ovum which is being released has to get transported, so there should be a duct system. What is that duct system? This thing becomes your duct system. What is this thing? This is known as oviduct, or you also call it as fallopian tube. What do you call it as? Fallopian tube, my dear children. Fallopian tube, as you see over here, they are finger-like projections like this, which are known as fimbriae. Okay, this is infundibulum. over here, this particular region is known as ampulla, very important region. This is where the fertilization happens. How can fertilization happen there, ma'am? Basically, the ovum comes and sits over here and thinks that sperm will come, and the sperm comes over here and fuses with it here in the ampullary region, and then you have isthmus. So from here to here, what do you call this as? Oviduct or fallopian tube. Now from here to here, what do you call this structure as? This is your major part where the baby is going to be nourished and being formed. It is known as the uterus. The uterus basically has a flap-like thing like this, which you call as cervix, which is known as cervix. From here to here, what do you call this structure as? This is known as vagina. How does sexual reproduction take place? Basically, there is insertion of penis into the vagina, and from here the sperms are being released, which gets into the female reproductive tract and goes over here, and later fertilization happens over there to form what? To form the zygote. The zygote, which is a single cell, remember zygote is single cell, it will now divide into multiple cells, and this structure is now known as an embryo. The embryo keeps on dividing, there will be 8 cells, there will be 16 cells, and later comes a stage where it will come over here, roll down over here and get embedded in the uterus layer. It will get inside the uterus layer. So this stage is known as blastocyst stage of the embryo. Now for your understanding, let me make you understand one very important thing as well. So suppose, first thing first, so in the uterus you have different layers. The outermost layer that you see over here, it is known as perimetrium. Inside the perimetrium you have a muscular layer, my dear children. It is made of muscles. Why do you need muscles in the uterus? Basically, suppose the baby has been formed, it has to move out, so contraction and relaxation has to happen. That is why you have a muscular layer which is known as myometrium. Now comes the major guy over here, which is the glandular layer. The glandular layer, which is known as, I'm going to mark it in yellow, works. It is known as endometrium. This layer's name you have to remember, endometrium. This endometrium is formed every month. When ovum is being released, endometrium is ready. Why it is ready? Suppose the egg and the sperm fertilizes, the zygote will be forming embryo. The embryo will be rolling down and coming over here, and it is going to get embedded. It is going to get embedded inside the endometrium. This process is known as implantation. Okay, and this is a very glandular layer. It has rich supply of blood, nutrients and everything. So the embryo will be getting support to grow over here for some time until the next thing is being formed, which is known as placenta. So initial nutrient supply is given by the endometrium, and this process where it is going to come and embed is known as implantation. Please remember it. Suppose this implantation has never happened, fertilization has never happened, what will happen? This particular thing that you see over here, it is going to flow down from your vagina, and this process is known as what? Menstruation. So in the lack of fertilization, what do you see? You see menstruation. Works? Cool? That's all. So ovaries are primary sex organs, these are secondary sex organs, and okay. What if fertilization takes place? I told you, if fertilization takes place, my dear children, okay, okay, I have not shown that. So basically what happens is that, suppose this is the embryo. The embryo has an outer layer and an inner layer. The outer layer that you see over here, it is going to make finger-like projections, my dear children. It is now going to make finger-like projections into the wall of the endometrium. Okay? Cool. Now this particular thing is going to form the embryo. This has formed the finger-like projection. So a part of the embryo is going to make finger-like projection. A part of the embryo is going to make the fetus. Suppose a fetus is being born over here. There is umbilical cord. I hope you know that. The umbilical cord basically comes over here. It has blood vessels, my dear children. It will be having blood vessels, and these blood vessels will be opening up here, to different areas. And there will be other blood vessels which would be bringing the blood back also. Now, why are they going there, ma'am? What is this thing being formed? This thing is being formed is known as villi, and the villi basically is covered by blood-filled spaces. This is what? Blood-filled spaces, my dear children. The blood-filled spaces, who is going to fill the blood over here? From the mother's body, blood is going to enter over here. The blood is going to enter over here. So from the mother's blood, if the mother's blood, suppose it has too much amount of oxygen, it will be going to the baby. It will be going to the baby. So mother's blood is not coming in contact. They are not, basically diffusion is happening over here. Inside the chorionic villi you have the blood vessels. Over here in the blood spaces you have the mother's blood. So basically there is no blood being mixed over here. Okay, diffusion is happening from oxygen. Over here it goes there. So oxygen is getting transported. This structure that is being formed over here, blood spaces from the mother, finger-like projections, villi from the embryo itself, you call it together as placenta. So placenta is being formed both by the embryo as well as the mother. Okay, now what happens, for example, the baby has to give out carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide is given out, some waste material is given out. So this is very much important. So after implantation, a special tissue called placenta develops between the uterine wall and the embryo. The embryo gets nourishment from the mother's blood with the help of this special disc-shaped tissue which embeds in the uterine wall. The developing embryo will also generate waste substances which can be removed by transferring them into the mother's blood to the placenta. So the waste is being removed, the important things being absorbed. Cool. Chalo. Next thing, what happens when egg is not fertilized? What happens if egg is not fertilized? The overgrown lining of the uterus, please know how to write this answer. Overgrown lining of the uterus, it is going to shed down. Okay, remember, use this word. It is endometrium is going to shed down in the lack of fertilization. Along with what? Blood, mucus and the unfertilized egg. The egg which is not fertilized, it also goes off. This is known as menstruation. It lasts for about 2 to 8 days or mostly 5 days. Okay. Now, the last topic of this particular chapter, that is STDs, sexually transmitted diseases. So, sexually transmitted diseases are those which are transferred from an infected person to a non-infected person only during sexual contact or with the help of sexual contact, because during sexual contact what is happening, the body fluids are getting mixed, my dear children. The body fluids are getting mixed. Examples of these diseases, herpes, genital herpes is there. You have HIV, AIDS, and then you have hepatitis B. All of them, they are sexually transmitted diseases. Okay. Now over here, what is contraception? That is another term. Contraception is basically a method or basically a device that can be used for birth control. We do not want more birth because the population is going high. So we want birth control mechanism, and that is what contraception. So first method is barrier method under contraception. You might be thinking, why ma'am is not talking about STD? I am going to talk about that. Listen to me carefully. So barrier method is a way of contraception. All the things that we are going to study is going to be contraceptive methods. First is barrier method. Barrier method is where you are creating a physical barrier between the sperm and the egg. You're not allowing them to meet. How you can do that? With the help of condom, my dear children. With the help of condom. So over here you have condom. This is put inside the penis. This is put inside the penis, right? On the top of the penis. So what happens? Basically, suppose this is the female genital tract which is known as vagina. The penis is being put over here, and then the condom is being placed over here. The sperms which are there, it is gathered over here. There is no body fluid contacts, which is why can I say that this contraceptive method, that is condom, which is a barrier method, the only method that can avoid STDs. It is the only method that can avoid STDs. No other contraceptive method allows what? Basically STD to be prevented. Please remember that. Now barrier method has this principle. There are different type of barriers. This is the female condom where it is put in the cervix. It is put in the cervix. Okay, and then the penis is being inserted through this. Now you have diaphragm, where basically the cervix that you saw in the uterus, you saw there is a region that is known as cervix. Over here a cap is being put, but the problem is the penis is still being inserted. The body fluids from the female and the male is going to be in touch. So this can lead to diseases. So in barrier method you have one thing that basically prevents STD, and that is what? Condom. Okay, now you have the next thing, that is intrauterine devices, or that's not contraceptive devices, you can just say IUDs, intrauterine devices. So intrauterine devices, there are different types. One is lipase loop. Okay, it's basically a non-medicated thing where doctors are going to put some foreign particle, lipase loop, inside the uterus. Now if something foreign comes up, our body will be in a mood to fight with it. So it makes the uterus very unsuitable for implantation to happen. Okay, it would not happen. Now the next thing is copper releasing IUDs. The next type is copper releasing IUDs, where what is happening? A copper T, this thing that you see over here, it is copper T. It is being inserted. What does the copper T do, my dear children? Copper T which is there, no, it is going to release copper ions. Okay, and these copper ions are going to mess up with the motility of the sperms. It does not allow the sperm to move. If the sperm movement is being reduced, do you think it can go and fertilize the ovum? No, it cannot take place. So that is why copper T, here it is very much important. So it is copper releasing IUD. There are different type of IUD. One is non-medicated, which I said, okay, it is going to act like a foreign particle. Now copper T is there. Apart from that, there is hormone releasing IUD. There is what? Hormone releasing IUD. What happens in hormone releasing IUD, my dear children? They are going to release hormones. Okay, for example, in our body, normal body, we need estrogen and progesterone in limited amount. They help in ovulation. They help in ovulation. What do you mean by ovulation? The ovum is basically protected in a layer. Okay, it is protected in a layer. It has to come out. This is known as ovulation. Okay, if it is not being produced like that, then there is no point of fertilization. There won't be fertilization that will be happening. So ovulation, fertilization, everything is being controlled by certain hormones, that is estrogen and progesterone in the body. Now if their level is being increased greatly, they are going to do the opposite of everything. Okay, they would not allow ovulation to happen. They would not allow the uterus to have a proper endometrium. Okay, they would not allow the cervix to help in the entry of sperm. So suppose this is the cervix. They are going to make a mucus plug over here. They are going to make a mucus plug over here such that the sperms which are there, they cannot enter the uterus. So there are three things that are done by the hormone releasing IUDs, or basically anything that releases hormone. Just understand, it is synthetic hormones that we are providing. It is not the body that is producing. So what does it do? It makes the cervix hostile to sperms. It does not allow the cervix to make the entry of the sperms. Second thing, it does not allow implantation to happen. It does not allow ovulation to happen. Three things are there. Please remember it. Okay, these are IUDs. Now apart than that, I told you surgical method where we spoke about vas difference being cut. It is known as vasectomy. But when fallopian tube is being cut, you call it as tubectomy. What do you call this as? Tubectomy. Again, the ovum would not be transferred. If ovum is not being transferred, do you think fertilization will happen? No. So this is surgical method where surgical intervention blocks the Gimme transport and hence prevents the conception. Next, we have oral pills. Oral pills is basically small doses of progesterone, estrogen. These are pills, again, these are synthetic hormones that we are giving to our body. It would not allow three things: ovulation, implantation, and it causes cervix to be hostile to sperms. Okay, these are the next method, that is oral pills. Now we have natural method where we ourselves are trying not to have basically not to have baby. How? There is periodic abstinence where basically a woman, okay, a woman has a natural cycle of 28 days where on the 14th day she will be ovulating. She will be ovulating. That means there is a release of ovum. If ovum is there, fertilization will happen. If sperm is also being there, right? So a period during this, that is 10 to 17 days, during this particular period, if fertilization is not happening, everything is going to be really, really good. This period is known as the fertile period. So periodic abstinence is basically when you are absent during this particular period. You are not allowing fertilization to happen during this particular period. Now you have one more thing, that is withdrawal or coitus interruptus. Basically, before the ejaculation takes place, if the male partner withdraws their penis, this is known as withdrawal method. This is natural methods which works on the principle of avoiding the chances of ovum and the sperm meeting. Now, that's all, my dear children. With this, we are completing. Please remember, in all the contraceptive methods, there is only one that prevents STD, and that is what? Condom. Fine. Now, one very important thing, if you are someone who is confused as to what you should be doing after your 10th grade, we have a perfect plan for you. There's Diksha's Scholastic Aptitude Test, where there will be 60-minute concept-based lecture followed by a one-on-one aptitude test, followed by an aptitude test, okay? And now, on the basis of your marks on the aptitude test, there will be one-on-one counseling. And then the person would be telling you what stream could be the best for you. If you are someone who is interested, definitely do not forget to register there. In the description box, there's a link. Apply there. Yeah, and I don't want to waste any single bit of your time. I try to complete within 1 hour. I hope I was able to do so. So that's all, my dear champions. If you think that this particular video was helpful, do not forget to say thank you, and do not forget to subscribe to our channel. Do not forget to smile as well, and I wish you all the best for your exams. Bye bye. Take care.